All right, let's talk about the LEC. The LEC this year has a completely new format to them. They are doing a 3-split system with a big playoff at the end to determine the Worlds teams. As you can see with the teams going, we have G2 and Mad Lions, who over the first 2 splits were pretty good. Both of them finished. G2 and Mad Lions were the finals teams in this first split, and in the second split, G2 was third, while Mad Lions won. Through the MSI showing, you can see that Mad Lions really did not have a great international showing. With those teams being top and BDS having good splits in the middle here, in their spring and summer split, BDS did well. BDS almost winning the spring split, but falling to Mad Lions. But then you can see Fnatic coming out of nowhere and getting second place in the playoffs, which means they go to Worlds. They had one really good split in the summer split when they changed a big part of their roster around, and now here they are. So let's talk about the LEC and see what their format changes bring us. So first team I want to talk about is actually the second place team, Fnatic. Fnatic has a really interesting team coming into Worlds this year. Like I said earlier, they've clearly gotten better and better throughout the year through their roster changes and through their players getting more comfortable with either their roster or the metas or whatever it is. This team has not even been together for a full year, the 5 players on this roster. The potential for their growth, even through this short tournament of Worlds, these couple of months they have, is really huge. Being new with the players around you and in a somewhat new environment still gives you a lot of potential for growth as you settle in and synergize better with your teammates. So in these new younger rosters, it's something you have to watch for, this explosive growth potential. So individually, Humanoid, every year he's at Worlds, he looks like a solid player. Ever since his first year at Worlds, which might have been like 2018, 2019, he's been looking really good. Especially last year on Fnatic, he was their best performing player at Worlds by far. Razork, I love this guy. I've loved watching this guy ever since he was on Misfits, that Misfits roster that barely missed Worlds. I think his energy is great. As a player, I think he's really solid on these picks in the jungle that give him a lot of early priority, early playmaking ability. With that being said, he's been successful on picks in these playoffs like the Karthus and the Ivern. I think Ivern does have that early playmaking potential. It is still a much more supportive champion than you might be used to out of this guy. And the Karthus pick is a very passive early game champion. You just want to farm, and it's not really what I would imagine his style to be. And yet it's been working for them. What I would love to see for these two, Humanoid and Razork, are picks where they can win the 2v2 mid, just so that they can kind of push Humanoid's leads into the other lanes. Now, the next person I want to talk about is Trimby. Trimby, I think, has a really high ceiling as a player, but he also has the potential to do really bad things. Like, he can miss hooks on Nautilus that are really easy to hit. He can slightly miss position and get caught out looking for vision. I think there are times where he just kind of loses a little bit of focus on the game and isn't playing perfectly. But like I said, he has a really high ceiling. He can be one of the best supports, especially out of Europe, where the support pool is actually really tight. So lots of potential from Trimby. Now, through the playoff run, they did play Wonder as Oscar Rinnan, their actual top laner, was injured. I believe Oscar Rinnan is coming back. Now, if they do bring Oscar Rinnan, this guy had the worst debut for a top laner out of any top laner in professional play possibly, having a terrible first 3 games. But even by the end of that first split, he was looking leagues more comfortable. He is a contender for one of the best EU tops if he's not injured, if he's feeling great. He is a player who can contest G2's top laner Broken Blade, who is easily the best top laner in Europe. Noah, their ADC, he's had the opposite of Oscar Rinnan. He had an insane debut where all they could do was talk about this guy's insane KDA. His recent playoffs were really weak. I don't think he can really... We'll have to see if he can find it again, but he was not really impressive on like the Xayah with like his feather placements. He wasn't really impressive on the Kai'Sa or the Aphelios. He just got a lot of kills. These things, like if he's doing damage at the end of the day, that's all you really want from your AD carry. But it could be a problem against other Eastern AD carries who are really experienced. They can see this bot lane has a lot of potential to do not well, and they might get focused and completely ran out of the game, in which case Fnatic will have a problem in this bot lane. This roster has the highest growth potential out of any roster here, so we will see. Now I want to talk about Mad Lions. Mad is, I think, a really weird team. Their bot lane is really good. Carzzy has had a really great year for himself. I think people give him a little bit too much hype, as he doesn't really have like these insane plays, like I keep saying, out of these Eastern AD carries. While he does have good plays, he still has lost series this year by being too aggressive on picks like Ezreal, who are known for their safety. While he is Mad Lions' best player right now, it is still, we will see how he competes against Eastern AD carries. Hylissang, always been a world-class support. He finds really good engages, sometimes without his team being there, which, no, maybe not good. But he's a very smart player. I always expect him to come in with something up his sleeve, some kind of pick, some kind of idea that's going to shake up the game. Mad Lions' strongest lane is definitely their bot lane, with Carzzy and Hylissang being their best players. Elyoya is a great jungler. He has possibly some issues on this team specifically. He is a jungler with the potential to be the best in Europe at any given point. Chasey is very young still, very young player. He has games where he looks really good, but he also has games where he's really not showcasing that he's ready for the international competition. And I think against, again, like top laners like the Shy, like Bin, like Keen, even like Licorice, he's going to have problems. Niski's been in the Worlds a lot now. He's been on rosters that do really good. He's been a player who's always on rosters that go far. But I don't know. When he makes it to Worlds, I don't think he competes against mid laners that he's going to be playing against. Playing against the top 16 mid laners in the world, Niski is just a little bit outclassed in lane, outclassed in his mechanical skill, and a bit of a liability. Like, you can kind of see it already in their games against G2. Every single game, they put Niski on Azir into Tristana, and every single game, Niski was getting pushed under his tower. And like, yeah, he's getting farm, but you're opting into a matchup where he can get farm safely, but he has no impact on the map. It's easily punishable. Chasey and Niski are liabilities in this team. The way their lanes go are going to determine how games go at Worlds. I do not believe Carzzy and Hylissang can smash bot lane hard enough to win games through the losses in mid and top. Another thing this team does is when they look for picks and they look for engages, they don't translate kills to objectives well. There are a lot of times where they will find kills, but they can't really find objectives because their wave control is just not there. They are very liable to be getting cross-mapped, outplayed, out-macroed by teams who have a lot more, I don't want to say knowledge in the game, but a lot more push control. Okay, now let's talk about G2. G2, the first place team in LEC. Really quick, just go through their players. Caps and Mickey are in conversation for best Western players of all time. Hansama, very bad year in North America last year, came back to Europe right where he left off in 2021. In 2021 Worlds, Rogue, Hansama was a monster. Even though they were in this group of death, Hansama looked really fucking good. Hansama has come back, he's found it again. In Europe, all four of their laners, Broken Blade, Caps, Hansama, and Mickey, they are very strong lanes. They obviously have the potential to lose lane, just like everybody does. They can stand against any laner that they are put up against and at least go even, put up a fight, force enemy jungler, support ganks. They will not be losing these lanes solo. Maybe Caps. And Yike finds a lot of aggressive counter jungle plays. He finds dives, he finds ganks. He finds these aggressive plays off of these strong laners. Yike, very, very young rookie, had a very stellar year around these veterans. I do not expect him to like collapse or anything. I think he was one of their better performing players at MSI. G2 looks better than they did at MSI, and Yike can play off his laners extremely well. Now let's talk about the team as a whole. This team is very creative. I know I've heard analysts and pro players talk about how they think League is solved at times. I think that take is absolutely ridiculous, and G2 proves that pretty easily. They have these picks that are like maybe pocket picks or counter picks or whatever they are. They play Kled and Swain top. They play these AP champions in the jungle, Fiddlesticks and Evelynn, even though those ones aren't working well. Mickey, people might know right now that he has this Lysandra support as a Rakan counter pick right now that looks really good. This team is willing to try things. They are willing to actually think about what they think is good in the meta, what champions they think are good, and play those champions, which a lot of teams are scared to do. They are scared to go off meta because they think if they don't play what's optimal, they are just clearly going to lose. G2, fortunately for League of Legends viewers, is willing to try and push meta. When they get a lead in their games, the games end really fast. They push these leads super strong. They're super aggressive with their leads. And Mickey thinks they can win Worlds. They can win Worlds. Now, BDS. Let's talk about BDS, the 4th place team. I am a maniac for BDS. Going through their players, Adam, insanely improved player from his rookie year. This guy is like the single strong point for BDS at times. They look at him as like, who knows what the team looks at him, but looking at him as a viewer, it looks like Adam is the one they push things through. He draws these Darius bans, these Olaf bans. He forces the enemy top laner to like play his game. He is starting to play things like the Jax, like the Renekton. He can play these meta champions, but just having this off-meta pool, again, makes him more dangerous to top laners who aren't used to playing things like that. Nuke also has a very unique champion pool. He plays a lot more control mages, like the Cassiopeia. The Azir is really good for him. These control champions that want to just sit and farm and then team fight. While the champions have these specific wants and needs, the team plays around those wants and needs really well. They play a very slow game where they can kind of control the way into the jungle, into these dragon pits, and if they have positioning, they can take the dragons and take the fights. But if they don't have the items yet, they won't take the fights. That allows Nuke to play these champions because he can just say, hey guys, I don't have my items yet, I don't want to fight, and the team will just play around that. And as soon as he gets his items, the team fights around him very, very good. Shio, I think, is a huge part of that. I think Shio, while people might look at him as not a great jungler, I think he sacrifices a lot of resources of his own so that he can mark enemy junglers and just take space and control space. So he gives up a lot of camps for this, but he gives a lot of priority to his carries to get farm. Now let's talk about their bot lane. Crowny historically has been a player that's gotten a lot of respect, even if he hasn't really gotten domestic wins. I think he's a player where once he gets ahead and he gets those items, he looks really good in a team fight. His positioning's solid, his damage, like his targeting is really good, but he and Labrav in lane, they have a lot of potential, but they do struggle a lot. It's up to Shio to like use his jungling to keep them in the game and even possibly give them a lead. And then, like I said, in team fights, Nuke and Crowny are very, very good. Nuke finds plays in these team fights that are really hard to find, and Labrav, Shio, and Adam, they do a really good job of peeling for Nuke and Crowny. They fight these fights where they just create these great situations for themselves, where they have these front-to-back fights, they have the flankers marked, and if they have these fights, they can really win because Nuke and Crowny are two players who can win fights like that. They just want to fight front-to-back. They want to find these front-to-back fights. That is where they excel. That being said, Crowny has shown in the past that maybe it's mental, maybe it's fatigue thing throughout longer series. He can kind of get a little lost in fights. Specifically, this Ezreal game he's played in playoffs, he did not look comfortable on the pick in that game 5 situation. It's up to the team to translate leads from Adam and like Nuke to the bot lane and to the mid game and late game. It's up to the team to get a bit more confidence in themselves in these later series. Maybe they just get a little nervous in these game 5 situations, but they are still a younger team, so they have the potential. That's the LEC. I mean, don't really expect anything out of any team except for G2. I think G2, this kind of roster, this kind of energy, it's semifinals or bust for this team. I'm excited to see it. I really want to see G2 make it to Worlds Finals again.